All right, everybody, in this video, we're gonna start going over all the Mevo Plus blocks. We're gonna go one by one, show you how you can start manipulating those or just making corrections in your swing to get the numbers to read a little bit better. Before we get there, shout out to our partner, Rain or Shine Golf. If you have any home golf simulator needs, make sure you check them out at the link below. And with that, let's get into the video. All right, so let's start breaking down angle of attack. So what is angle of attack first? When you're reading this off of a launch monitor, basically if you look at a golf swing, I'm gonna show you with this hula hoop what we're looking at. And by the way, if you have a hula hoop and just a driveway marker or just use your golf club, you're really gonna have a good feel for what is going on in the swing. But using this hula hoop here, the angle of attack is basically just the angle in a degrees where you're going into the golf ball. How are you attacking down at the ball? So we talked about in the last video, when we see this number on the screen, it's gonna come up in a number that's either negative or positive. When you've got the ball on the ground, you're typically gonna see it be a negative, almost always. I could see with a 3-wood, maybe a hybrid, where you get some cases that it is a positive number, but it's gonna be very, very small. When you start teeing the ball up, you're gonna start seeing it go positive because you're gonna be hitting up into the ball. So that's, again, just a brief recap of what we're looking at. Now let's talk about how do we influence this number. So when we go through and do angle of attack, let's talk about the pre-swing first, okay? Pre-swing first. What can I do to influence my angle of attack, okay? The first thing I can do is just look at my body alignments in general. Okay, so if I take this stick here, this alignment rod, and I just put it across my shoulders, when I get set up, what you'll see is one thing I can do to influence my angle of attack is just the angle of my shoulders. If I start to tilt my shoulders back, you're gonna see that everything in general starts tilting up. So that way, I'm gonna start having a little bit more of a positive angle of attack or a shallower angle of attack. There's that word shallow for the rest of the golf world. But you're gonna start seeing that happen. Now, there's a balancing act to it. I'm not saying to hit down on it. You have to get, your shoulders like this. That's not advisable. But you definitely don't wanna get super tilty unless maybe you're hitting a driver. If you're finding, hey, I'm not having an issue hitting my driver and getting up on it, then that's where you would look at that, right? So that's something I would look at right off the bat. Where is our body position? Start experimenting with how much tilt in your shoulders are you putting away from the target to get that angle of attack dialed in. That's the first thing I would do. The second thing, and another very easy thing, is we're gonna bring the golf ball in. I'm gonna look at my ball position, okay? So let's just have our hula hoop in here. And let's say this green section is our just area, the strike zone, okay? Let's say I take the ball right in the middle of the stance. You can see that the club's coming down, and then it's going to ascend again. But we're looking for the strike of, that's what we're measuring. Well, if I move the ball back, you can see I would be catching the ball more on the downward part of the strike. If I'm moving the ball forward, I'd start catching it on the upward part of the strike. So that's something that right off the bat would start influencing our angle of attack before we ever hit a golf ball, is that ball position. I think that's really important for people to know. A lot of people say, oh yeah, I'm supposed to move the ball around. Why do you do that? There it is. That's one of the big reasons why you do that. So knowing how to adjust ball position properly, that can give you a proper angle of attack. That's why with the driver, we want to go more forward. It's going to help promote sweeping up on the ball, that positive angle of attack. With a wedge, you're going to start seeing it go back and get into the middle of the stance. That's when you're going to start seeing you hit down on it just a little bit more. All right, so let's start talking dynamically what's gonna happen in your golf swing when we want to influence angle of attack. So this gets a little bit trickier, and we are gonna look at some things where, all right, you might see some other issues like that come out of the golf swing, and you're like, oh yeah, that looks familiar. Well, this is gonna have some effect on that, and it is tough to say, other parts of the swing do influence this angle of attack number, but again, if you're finding, hey, I'm having a hard time getting down on the golf ball, or I'm having some issues with chunking it, things like that, then this is where we'll start looking at these things, okay? So let's start talking about the first one here, and that's gonna be somebody that has an angle of attack that is a little bit too shallow, or they're not hitting down on the ball enough. Okay, so that happens with people that are hitting irons where they're just not getting the club to travel down into the ball, and they hit the equator of the ball with the bottom of the club, the leading edge. So there's kind of two things that I look at when we go through for that purpose, all right, for that problem. All right, so the first one's gonna be, when we make a backswing, it's gonna be poor transfer of pressure, okay? It's gonna be poor transfer of pressure. So the first thing is, people bring this club back, they get up to the top, and then they do one of two things. One, they either just hang out back on their back foot, which gets this club coming down too early, and by the time they hit the ball, they're already coming back up. So that's gonna look something like this. You know, we've gone up, and then we start to go down, and that hoop is going to start shifting where it goes up a little bit. That's going to cause that club to travel upward too much into the ball. You're not going to get down on it. So what do you need to do for that? You need to get back, and then the first thing we want to do is start shifting our pressure. Notice we're just pressuring forward. We're not going to move our whole entire mass forward per se, but we're going to start pressuring forward, so that way I can keep moving forward through the shot. That's going to move the lowest point of the swing forward. That angle of attack gets a little bit more down. This whole hoop's going to start shifting forward. Now, the other thing I see when people struggle with this is they do a little bit of what we call a back out, where they're going to go back, right? And they go back, and usually they look something like this. Their head is too far forward. Their body kind of reverse pivots forward. And what happens is this hoop will start to move forward too soon, and you have no chance of actually getting down to the ball. The only way you would actually get there is to just smash down on it. So what happens on the way down, you do this, you back out of it, and that hoop rapidly moves backwards, starts going up. Notice how our body tilts if you go back to what we were talking about earlier, and you're gonna have some issues. You're gonna not be able to shift this hoop forward and be able to get a good solid strike on the ball. So you wanna make sure, hey, we're not backing up out of it. We're gonna be nice and centered over the ball. We bring it back, we pressure forward, and we are going to be getting right over the top of that ball, able to strike down on it. Anytime you're moving backwards, we're going to talk about that when we start hitting up with the driver in a sec, but anytime we're moving backwards, you're going to run into issues, okay? So that's the two major things I see with people that struggle with hitting down on the ball. They're usually doing one of those two things, all right? Let's talk about going up on it. Now, space concerns, we are not gonna have the driver out, but this is gonna be the major time that you're looking at hitting up on the ball. How are you gonna get that club to travel up? That's mainly a driver, okay? Mainly a driver. Well, again, if we're gonna hit a driver, imagine I've got a driver here. Ball goes in the front of the stance. If you think about what we talked about pre-setup, we can promote a little more up by getting our shoulders tilted a little bit more. Now, what we see here is I want to get my head behind the ball, and I want to feel it stay there. So when I'm swinging, and let's say I'm hitting a driver, the main thing that's going to tell you, hey, I am not hitting up on a driver enough, is you are popping the ball up. You're going straight down, you're going under the ball, and then that hits the top. That's when you get those dummy marks on the driver, and that's going to send it straight up into the air, okay? That's the number one thing that's telling you, hey, I'm not hitting with a good angle of attack that goes up onto the ball. So what do we have to do? We have to get ourselves set up more behind the ball, and when I get back, I've got to get everything back behind and keep it back here, okay? I don't want to feel so much where I'm pushing forward or feel like my head is moving forward. You're still going to feel like you pressure into your front foot, but as I come through, I'm going to feel like I'm keeping everything back away from the target. So you can even use this with irons if you feel like, hey, I take too big of a divot in the ground, but mainly with the driver, that's gonna help you start getting up onto that golf ball, okay? So how your body's positioned at the start and how you maintain it through is a big thing. Now, one little caveat that I see people do, they say, all right, I'm gonna get tilted behind, I'm gonna get everything behind. They bring it back and they say, all right, I'm gonna stay back here. And what they do is they stay on this back foot. Notice how I haven't pushed my pressure forward. When I stay on my back foot, notice how all those angles we talked about, my shoulders are level. Everything is gonna be in a little bit of a rough spot here, and I am not able to keep my body back because I have nothing to push off of on my front foot on the ground. So that's just a little caveat as you go there. So really paying attention to how you maintain your body angles through the strike, that really will help you with that positive angle of attack, mainly with your driver. But again, we see that a lot with people on their irons, especially if you're a better player. You want to take a smoother divot. Start paying attention to the angles your body are going through the swing. All right, so that's going through the angle of attack number. Again, a number I'm really excited about. It's a number I actually go to really early on in the whole improvement process, because if you start mastering how to control angle of attack with all of these different variables, I think you'll see that you actually can change a lot of other parts of your swing and a lot of other numbers that we will see. And we'll keep going through those further in these other videos, but try this one out, start working on how you can change your angle of attack and see if you're getting some good changes with your swing. I think you'll be surprised when you do that. So again, thank you everybody for tuning in. We will have more of the videos going through all the tiles. Make sure you click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on them. Thank you everybody for watching and tuning in. Hopefully everybody's staying safe and healthy out there, and we will see you in the next video. Peace.